Hello, my name is Patricia Thornton, and I'm the editor of the special issue on the CCP centenary for the China Quarterly. And I have with me today two of the authors that contributed to that special issue. I have Wang, who is actually an associate professor speaking to us from McGill University in Canada, where it's mid-morning and beautiful weather outside, unlike Grace Moe, who is a senior lecturer at SOAS here in London, not too far from where I am in Oxford. And we're enjoying a cloudy afternoon, as usual, for the UK. But we're here today to talk about the terrific article that you both wrote for the CCP centenary issue on rural cadres. And I thought I would start with Juan and ask if you wanted to summarize briefly what the findings were for your article.
Of course. Thank you for having me here. If I have to very briefly talk about the overall changes starting from 1949 until now, what we see really is that under Xi Jinping administration, there's major changes, which we consider the institutionalization of a discipline in the ways in which village cadres are being disciplined, primarily through party regulations and legal methods. In the past, if we think about the Maoist era, there were certain regulations as well as policy campaigns and one-time math campaign. This is post 1949. Once when during the reform era, what we see is that primarily through policy regulations and certainly lots of policy changes to improve farmers' conditions and policy regulations against any predatory behaviors of village cadres during the reform era, and certain laws, but not to discipline the cadres, but rather to give a voice to the farmers and helping the implementation of government policies, such as the agricultural law in China and the election law, starting with the election law early on, and then the agricultural law later on. But what we see under Xi Jinping administration is that the party's control over village affairs is strengthened through through two ways. In terms of party control, the head of the village would, through election, become this will be cut out. So
it will.
The party secretaries in the village at the village level would, through election, becoming the head of the villages. And the party members in the party committee and village cadres in the village committee, they will overlap and become the same group of people. So this way, we see that the party really, through this personnel and through the illegal election, have a full control of village officials. That's one. Two is that right now, when I talk about the legal change, also is a major change in 2020, where the 公职人员政务处分法. According to this law, basically, if we look at this law refers to the 2018 supervision law, 监察法. Through these changes, these two legislations, village cadres are now officially defined as public agents, therefore subject to legal and administrative punishment directly. Previously, it was primarily through legal interpretations. So overall, we see is that there's a strengthening of party control and the use of legal channels to control village cadres under Xi Jinping administration. And that's our observation in terms of major shift.
Terrific. So can I ask Grace then, because of her expertise in law, if she could follow up a little bit and explain how the legal status of these village cadres may have changed over time?
Yes, of course. So village cadres primarily are members of the previously defined as an autonomous organization in China. So they are members of a village committee. That definition is provided in 2018 Constitution, for example. So generally, people might think that the village cadres are not a public representative of a public body, but actually their legal status is quite ambiguous. So for example, in the criminal law, in the 1997 criminal law, these village cadres can be prosecuted for corruption and embezzlement. However, the application of the criminal law with regards to village cadres has to be through the legal interpretation through the Standing Committee of National People's Congress. So National People's Congress have to give a specific interpretation to incorporate village cadres as a suitable personnel who are able to be captured by this by criminal law. So their legal status has never been clarified in for example, in from before 2000, and the law only started to sort out the issue actually since 2020 law of a law on administrative discipline for public agents. So that's the first time the law started to clarify village cadres are public bodies or public agents. So, and this again, the definition of the public agents actually was defined in the 2018 supervision law. So there has been lots of twists and turns to clarify what is their legal status, whether the law can be applied to these people. Are they really public agency? Can they really be able to be captured by the corruption law in criminal law, which only applies to public agency?
Yeah, thank you. One of the things that I thought was so interesting about your article was that you trace out the role of work teams, for example, during the Mao era in particular, but still today, and this overlaps somewhat with Elizabeth Perry's contribution. She's written an article also for the special issue in which she's also talking about the role of work teams, although in a very different sort of a context. But I mean, we're sort of, what we see is this repeating theme of work teams going down, or this practice that has persisted from the Mao era to the present. And then the other section of the paper that I found really interesting was this discussion of the Fungchao experience. Juan, did you want to say something about, or can you explain what is the Fungchao experience, and what do you think that its persistence, or maybe its renaissance, and maybe it didn't seem to be much talked about for the, say, in the Jiang Zemin era. I don't think there were too many references to it, but it seems to have made this remarkable comeback under Xi Jinping. So I was just wondering if you could say a little bit more about what was the Fungchao experience and why might it be coming back now?
Okay, yes, Fungchao 经验, Fungchao experience is such an interesting, its comeback is such an interesting phenomenon. Itself was very famous. Fungchao is a district in Jiangsu, in Zhejiang, province. The Fungchao experience became a term during the Siqing, the four cleanups. In fact, in December 1963, Fungchao 经验 became the starting point of promoting, the circulation of the Fungchao experience became the starting point of promoting mass struggle sessions over coercive means of correction, let's say, because Fungchao 经验, when it was circulated, it was considered the importance of 文斗, that is to persuade somebody, changing their mind through reason, was more important and more thorough then 武斗, which is through coercion. Basically, through the coercive apparatus, you arrest them and send them away. So Fungchao 经验, that was the beginning when reasoning should be prioritized over coercion. When this Fungchao 经验 is revived now, the focus is only one element of that original meaning of Fungchao 经验, which is relying on the masses, which is using the masses to certainly to inform and to solve problem locally instead of waiting for directives from above. So this is one element of the original Fungchao 经验. And ironically also, what we see really is the coercive apparatus, the legal campaign, right? The 扫黑除恶 campaign's involvement in cleaning up the village affairs, certainly the village depots and all that. So we do see the involvement of coercive apparatus, but at the same time, we see the promotion of the original Fungchao experience to highlight the reliance on the people, and to highlight, to keep the contradictions and to keep the problems locally instead of waiting for order from above. That's the interesting comeback of Fungchao 经验.
Yeah, thank you for that. I mean, I really do think that this is fascinating, but it's also, I think, quite worrying for the position of rural cadres. I mean, as we know, the state has had a considerable amount of difficulty in retaining local talent, especially at the grassroots level. But now, given the changes that Grace talked about, the legal changes and the bringing of these actors now into administrative surveillance under administrative law in their new formalized role. And then, so that's what top down kind of pressure on these grassroots cadres. But now with this Fungchao 经验 or Fungchao experience, I imagine there will also be seeing some bottom up pressure as well from the masses. I don't know if, I'm sure the two of you have seen the recent case of the pianist who was prosecuted. The famous pianist is his name Liu Yindi or something. That he was prosecuted for soliciting a sex worker in Beijing.
Oh yes, yeah. Yes.
It was later just a few days ago. It was announced that it was the masses in Chaoyang who turned him in. And then there was there have been a couple of interesting articles in the Chinese media about who are these Chaoyang Chunzhou. So I'm imagining that if you have this Fungchao experience and there's soliciting more input from the masses, then the grassroots cadres are going to be feeling the pressure both from above through these administrative changes, legal changes, as well as from below now. So who's going to want to be a village cadre? Do either of you have any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, I think what's happening is really interesting. I guess we can keep in mind that the masses always have information to give and always have information to report, but there is a gatekeeper always. So the masses or the people can always report and they always have something to report, but there's always a gatekeeper who decides what to take or what not to take and who to take and take out or not. So given the disciplinary regime that's being strengthened through the party regulations and through the legal channels, certainly looks like the village cadres don't have much room for maneuver. But I think that the party would, and I think it has, in fact, in the early years of Xi Jinping administration, given new incentives for village cadres. The promotion is no longer off the table. So it's not in the past, to motivate village cadres to work for the party and for the government was not that easy. If promotion was not, the incentives were not there. So you need to allow them to have some incentives on the side, not just bonuses, but also have their own businesses, and after retirement, what they can get, that kind of incentives on the side. Certainly, corruption was widespread. So now, given this disciplinary regime, what we could expect is alternative motivations and incentives. So if you do well, you could be promoted, and certainly some approved special treatment, approved privileges could be happen to village officials. I think that the focus of the party is not just cage them, rather it's not just to control them, rather to cage them so that they listen. And but for them to listen, incentives will be given.
I mean, I just going to say, I'm finding this a little bit surprising, because didn't Xi Jinping have a period during which he was a grassroots cadre at the village level? Because he began, as we know, very famously as a sent down youth. And then, if we believe the hagiography, he works his way slowly up through the ranks, from within the commune and down to which he was sent outside of Yan'an. So I'm a bit surprised that all of these new pressures are now coming to bear, and that he's not a little bit more sympathetic, if you will, to the plight of grassroots cadres. But yeah, I don't know. Did you want to add anything, Juan?
Well, just chatting. I want to say that I think he understands the type of work village cadres do, and he knows they're important. But he also understands the potential problems that village cadres could create, right? In terms of society conflict, in terms of the grievances from farmers, and certainly the widespread corruption and all that. So in his case, he was a special, in terms of promotion wise, he was a special case, and we do see some of the sent down cadres from upper levels just to have built up certain grassroots experiences before they get promoted back to the national level. So really, those original village cadres have had little chances of promotion, but I think that's potentially going to change in the long term. Yeah.
And then, Grace, can I ask you a completely unfair question?
No
Just given your legal expertise, Xi Jinping has made an awful lot, as we know, of the rule by law and of building China into a rule by law country. How do you think that this is going to be impacting the Chinese Communist Party moving forward in terms of how it's interacting with its state agents? At any level, either at the grassroots or even at the mid-range levels of the party.
Yes, I think this rule by law or rule of law rhetoric does have a significant impact on the state agents, because they are now under quite a lot of more stringent regulations and laws to watch over what they are doing. Therefore, they are not just subject to the criminal law, but also a number of administrative law, as well as party policies, party disciplinary policies, etc. So they are significantly under lots of pressure, and they have to be more careful with their conduct, their relationships, and the way they speak. They're including their extra recreational times, how they are going to associate with one another. So this state apparatus will be under much more pressure compared to the previous regime. Yeah.
I agree. John, go ahead. Sorry.
I just want to say yes. I just want to say that the rule by law rhetoric and policy changes is not in contradiction with the party leadership. What we do, if we consider law really is an instrument, it's not on equal footing with the party leadership. 东西南北中，党政军民学, the party leads everything. So law is, for me, when I think about the politics, it is to regularize governance, to reduce uncertainty, improves predictability of governance. So it is not in contradiction with the party leadership, at least from the party's perspective.
Yes. Yeah, I, the only thing that I would add, and maybe Grace will respond to this as well, is that the party, however, also wishes to preserve a space outside of the law for it to act, because it needs to respond to shifting conditions. Like we're looking at the promulgation of a third resolution on party history coming up very soon. And this, I think, is going to be based in part on the party's assessment that the party and China has now moved into a new stage. But if the party is bound by law, then it will always be responding to things retrospectively, in a sense, within a retrospective framework. It's very difficult for law to keep up with the kinds of rapid historical changes I think the party's trying to usher in. So I don't know, but personally, I think this places the party in a really interesting position to the law. I don't know what Grace thinks, but I'm sure she knows more about this topic than I do.
Yes, I agree, absolutely. Because the party, the Chinese constitution is basically a constitution that's not just about the legal framework that the party established to legitimize the regime, but also it is a kind of just like Wang mentioned, it's a kind of a cage. So if the party have to have to gain the legitimacy, they themselves have to be act within that constitutional framework. This means the party's policy, etc., will be interweaved into the legal framework. So that means that the party policies, disciplinary policies, previously was kind of an outliner, but now they have to be incorporated within the legal framework. But so actually the understanding of the rule of law and in Western context is quite different from the Chinese context. So in the Chinese context, the rule of law is more about they using the law to maintain the stability and maintain the control of the state apparatus. So rather than the due process and the universal rights, that sort of understanding. So there is some discrepancies between the two concepts, but yes, they are now trying to integrate the party policies with into the legal framework.
Thank you both so much. I just wanted to thank you both for taking the time out today to talk to me about your paper, but more broadly to thank you for your terrific article, because I really learned a lot from it. And I thought it was just so interesting to take that retrospective look at these grassroots state agents and then how they're being controlled over time throughout the CCPs. Well, it wouldn't be quite their centenary because they haven't been controlling grassroots cadres for 100 years, but certainly for several decades in power, it's been very educational for me. So thank you both so much.
Thank you so much, really, Tia, for all your support throughout the whole process. Yes,
exactly. We're great. We're very, very grateful. Thank you very much for having us.
It is absolutely my pleasure, and it's a terrific article. So I encourage everybody to take a look at it.